Do you have expensive taste in home decor but are living on a budget? Well, with a little bit of creativity and a blank rug, you can create a piece of high-end inspired decor for your home. For this project, I first headed to Walmart and picked up a blank coir rug for around $6. To start, I first decided on a design and drew it out on a piece of paper. Then I flipped over the mat so the black side was facing up. For this design, I found the largest bowl I owned, then placed it on the right short side of the rug, centered it, and traced the top half of it with a chalk marker. Then I freehanded the other portion to look sort of like a Pac-Man. Coming out of the opening of the circle, I drew a banner going to the left. Then I used a long ruler to draw a line from the bottom of the curve all the way to the left, and repeated that on the other side. I also drew a line from the bottom of the banner down on the left side. It's important to note that I drew the design the opposite way that I wanted it to be when I flipped the rug back over. Next, I placed a cutting mat underneath the rug and used a box cutter to cut the outline of the design. I then went back in with scissors to perfect the edges. Next, I used a light hand to paint the outlines of the design on the front of the rug. Then I filled in the round shape with 2 coats of an off-white/yellow paint and the banner with 2 coats of white paint. I've learned over the last year or two of painting rugs that you need a lot of paint, more than you think you need. So I poured the paint directly onto the rug, then used a flat paintbrush to manipulate it. I allowed a few hours of dry time in between each coat before I moved on. Then I used blue paint in a squirt bottle and a large ruler to create vertical stripes on the background of the rug that were 1 inch apart. Next, I freehanded the word welcome onto the banner with a black paint pen, then went over the letters with red paint. Next, I used a fine tip paintbrush to add dark brown accents to the circle, then used some pink paint to outline the banner. I also decided to alter the shape of the end of the banner, then finished painting the outline. I allowed that coat to dry, then I thickened the letters and added a shadow to both the letters and the banner, and also added horizontal blue lines to the background to create a grid pattern. Once everything was fully dried, I sprayed the entire rug with 2 coats of clear rubber sealant spray to make it waterproof and durable for outside use. Now I have a fun pop art style fortune cookie rug that was inspired by the painted anthropology rugs.
So the first thing we need to do is print out our design. So I have my core doormat here. I have one that already has a border on it, but you could also do this on a plain core mat. And I'm just going to get my image all set up here and ready so that I can tape it together. Now these images do have a border on them. I do need to cut the border off so that my image lines up correctly. So I just use a pair of scissors to trim it really close to the letters. Then I'm just going to use a bit of Scotch tape and I'm just going to tape all my papers together exactly how the design fits. Once I have my design taped, I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and I'm going to cut out the letters. So I'm going on the outside edge of the ink and I'm just cutting around. Now for the middle of my letters, I want to be very, very careful because I do need to save these pieces. So the middle of my K here, I need that for my stencil. So I'm just going to put that aside so that I have it. I'm going to continue cutting out all the letters, making sure that I'm very careful to get very clean lines. And I'm using a very sharp X-Acto knife. This will work the best for you. Make sure it's really sharp so that you don't get any tearing of your paper. With my last letter cut out, we can now begin to stencil. So I'm going to use this spray adhesive and I'm going to spray the back of my design just all over, just to give it that extra little bit of stick before we get started. I'm going to flip my design over and I'm going to bring in my mat here and I'm going to place my design down on my mat. Next, I'm going to take some straight pins and I'm going to push the pins into my design very close to the edge of the paper. This will hold the paper down while I'm stenciling. So you want to go right to the tips of those pieces of paper and make sure they're stuck in really well. I'm also going to use the pins to secure in the middle parts of my design, so the middle of the K and the P's. Next, I'm going to use some black acrylic paint with a number 8 stenciling brush, and I'm going to start painting. So I dab it in the paint and then I dab a little bit off on my paper, and then I just make sure that I dab straight up and down. You don't want to go in on an angle at all. You want to go straight up and down, nice vertical pounces with your stencil brush. You do want to make sure that you hold the paper a bit while you're stenciling, and then as well you can hold those inside pieces as well if they slip a little bit. With the paint done, I am going to remove my stencil, and what we're left with here is a gorgeous, crisp, clean design. I'm going to go back in with a number 1 stencil brush just to fine tune any areas where the paint is a little light, and again just vertical dabs up and down. To seal my mat, I do 2 coats of this Scotchgard Heavy Duty Weather Shield. So I do 1 coat, let it dry for about 4 hours, and then do another coat. With my mat done and dry, I can place it out on my fall porch and enjoy this gorgeous piece of decor that I made using a stenciling technique that didn't cost me very much at all.
So we are going to be making a DIY watermelon doormat. You could choose any fruit you want, but we're going to be doing watermelon. You could hand draw the watermelon out, but I think having 2 people doing this, it's going to be easiest for us to use kind of more of a stencil. So what I did was took an old sponge, I peeled off the backing part that it was one of those magic eraser types, and all I did was just drew kind of a rough watermelon shape, see that? And all I'm going to do is cut it out, and then we're going to get started. I'm going to show you how to use it as a stencil. And you could even get creative and maybe cut 2 or 3 different ones. We're just going to do the same shape over and over again. So I've already pre-poured out my pink paint, and I'm going to show Vivi how to do this, and then she's going to take a turn at it. All you are going to be doing is getting your sponge this side down, and you're just going to be placing it all the way down and get quite a bit of paint on it. I'll show you kind of how that's looking. See, it's really covered. And then you're just going to kind of want to pick your places. I'm going to kind of scatter them over the mat. So there's really no rhyme or reason. You can kind of do whatever you want. So then you just lightly, do you want to help me push that down, Viv? On all edges, yep, just lightly push it down. And then you're going to hope for the best coverage, but again, we're going to peel this back, and I'm sure there's going to be some parts that don't have the coverage on them, so that's no problem. You just peel it right off. Actually, that's pretty good, but I do want more coverage. So I'm going to take this brush. It's just kind of dipped in the same color. You can use a paintbrush, you can use anything. I just had these little sponge ones laying around. And then all you're doing is making sure you stay in the lines, but you're just dabbing just to fill it in a little bit more. You want to help me out with that one, Viv? Fill it in a little bit. Here you go. And I'm going to get started on the next one. So on this green one, all I'm doing is just getting a regular kind of thicker brush. You can use anything you have on hand. You can use one of these sponges if you like. But all I'm doing is I'm mixing 2 shades of green just because that's a personal preference. So what I'm going to show you here is the rind part, and this is really easy. You're just kind of hand painting it on. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I love this brush because it's the perfect thickness for the rind. But all you're doing is just kind of doing that cool little shape. Really easy. It doesn't take any artistic ability. You're basically just doing a curved line. Has anybody else ever made anything like this or used a stencil on maybe like dish towels or anything like that? I'd love to hear. Or if you were to do this, you know, what fruit would you choose? Or you could even do stripes. If you don't have to do this, you could get in and hand paint stripes. You could tape it off and make them really crisp. Or, you know, you could do more organic. So there's tons of options. Okay, so the final step, we are gonna do some seeds for this watermelon. And I like to do maybe 3 or 4. So once again, here, I'll take that out of your hand, and I'm gonna show you, Viv, how to do the seeds. And this is just regular old black acrylic paint. And I'm just gonna do, I don't want them to be perfect. I kind of want them to be a little scattered, just like a real watermelon would be. So let's try and do 3 for each one. How does that sound, Viv? Okay, I'm gonna do 1 more, and then it's gonna be your turn. Let's see what you got. What do you think, guys? Pretty cute, huh?
Eyes.
Yeah, it does. Let's try to make one where that helps with the eyes. Maybe we do 4. Let's do 4 on some of them. How about that? Okay, it's your turn. You want to do 3 or 4?
Yeah.
Okay, good job.
This one's gonna be.
I love doing these type of projects when you can involve your kid. Yeah, you wanted to do very small. There you go. One more.
I'm gonna do 3 ones over here because it's.
Hi, we have finished the rug and it's 90% dry, so we're just not going to step on it. But I just kind of wanted to show you how it looks styled on the porch. I went ahead and overlaid it over this black and white striped rug. As you can see, it just adds a nice little fun pop to the front door. Actually, I think I really like it a lot with our color of our front door.